Is this your idea of riveting television? Might this be your idea of a fun day out on the town? Or could this be your favorite video game? Then do I ever have a board game for you? Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff, your tabletop technician here on the Dice Tower, and today I'm going to introduce you to Black Friday, a 2023 title by Friedemann Friese, which is in fact a remake of Black Friday, a 2010 title from Friedemann Friese. And in fact, the first thing I'm going to show you is just how much the color palette of this game has changed in 13 years. Right. Well, alright, so here's where I usually cut to a bunch of B-roll footage and tell you how to play the game, at least from a 10,000 foot view or so. And usually the games I do this with have pages of rules explaining each action a player can take and how the various systems within the game function. But this is a stock market game, and a pretty pure one at that. The simple concept of buying low and selling high is the core premise behind this entire game. And on a player's turn, they can either buy shares of a stock, sell shares of a stock, a phrase I'm going to be challenged with for at least the next 10 minutes or so, or they can buy bricks of gold, and that's it. Obviously, you want to buy at the lowest prices and sell at the highest prices, which means I could probably just wrap up this video right now, except I can't. Because what makes Black Friday the stock market game that it is all the gyrations and fluctuations and evaluations of the market itself that makes the stock market the stock market. And it's at this point that this video has to get a little weird and maybe a little boring, because look, on your turn you can buy shares, taking as many of these little wooden briefcases from the market as you want, can afford, and are allowed to buy based on the level of the market dictated by these tiles on the main board that are revealed as the share values reach higher and higher bands of prices on the share price table. That was already a slew of words to say, but the turn isn't over yet, because then you have to take one additional share from the market, which, if possible, must be one of the colors of shares you just purchased, and add it to this share purchase track on the main board. And I'd tell you now what that track does, except there's a bunch of other programmatic if-then-else statements that need assessed first. Like, for example, if you've now emptied the market of a particular colored share, you have to bump the price of that stock up on the share price table, simulating supply and demand. Also, if there are now 3 of the same color of share on the share purchase track, the price of that stock goes up as well. And if that row is now full, a price change event is triggered. I'm going to get to the price change event in a bit, as the rulebook does as well, and mention a few other things first, like for example, that sometimes you might purchase all the shares of a color, leaving none of that color left to move to the share purchase track on the board, in which case you get to pick the color that you move down. The same rule repeats when you buy gold. The price of gold starts at $20 and will increase to $100 throughout the game, which is in fact the only endgame trigger of Black Friday. You can never sell your gold, and the price never goes down, which of course means the best thing to do is buy gold early when it's $20, letting it jump 5-fold in value by the end of the game. Except that it's maybe not the best thing to do. Stock prices in the game fluctuate wildly from $4 to $240, though the rulebook is even quick to point out that you're unlikely to see the $240 value in your playthrough. Now, when you go to sell shares, you again simply place your little briefcases back onto the main board and take money based on their current value, but a similar checklist of steps follows as with the purchase share action. First, you check the current share sale tracks on the main board, of which there are 3, and move a share from it of one of the stocks you sold up to the market as well. And again, if none of the colors you sold are present in this track, you pick another share of your choice to move. But then the price of the share you moved goes down, which may not be one of the shares you actually sold. If by this point a number of shares have been removed from the active share sale track based on the current player count, a price change event is again triggered. And I guess I'd better explain that now. No stock market game is realistic without a little market volatility, and the price change event aims to simulate just that. First, you'll draw shares from this bag, equal to the number shown at the bottom of the current level tile. Then you go through 7 steps of rules, in which you first see how many black shares were drawn, adjusting the gold price up for each, then placing 1 black share back in the bag if that's all you drew, and then adjusting the prices of each stock based on the number of shares drawn from the bag, subtracting the number of black shares if you drew 2 or more. Referencing the chart on the main board, you'll adjust each stock price, moving both vertically and horizontally. If the marker needs to move horizontally but can't, it's moved upwards or downwards instead, which could potentially trigger the next level of the game. By now, I'm kind of hoping that 2 prevalent ideas have popped into your head. Number 1, this game is very random. Players affect the market by buying and selling shares, but those purchases and sales might not adjust the market value as expected. Also, the price change step is a big old monkey wrench in the gears of this economic engine, which could understandably produce wildly chaotic results. Number 2, this game is My first play of Black Friday was plagued by frequent visits to the rulebook, with multiple undos and redos as we forgot to move shares when buying gold, lost track of price change triggers from the share sale tracks, and oftentimes when adjusting those prices, forgot whose friggin' turn it was. Funny thing is too, it was only a 2-player game, which made it even more fiddly because of MIBS, which is short for the Minimally Intelligent Broker Service, a mandatory AI player at 2 and an optional one at 3 or 4. And I'd love to say that MIBS has a pretty simple rule set. He buys whatever is cheapest, buying shares if it's a tie, over gold that is, and sells if he doesn't have enough money to buy the maximum allowable number of shares or gold on his turn. But then you have to do the math to figure out what is cheaper, and then there is a list of steps to follow when it comes to resolving ties if he has multiple options in any of the decisions that a normal player would get to make. And that might have been the worst of it, except MIBS actually beat us both. Like I said, the premise of this game is incredibly simple. Buy low, sell high, and of course, every once in a while grab some gold since you know it'll be worth exactly $100 a brick at game end. But along the way, players can make a ton of mistakes. I've completely run out of money and shares towards the end of a game, wasting turn after turn, buying 0 shares just to keep triggering price change events until the game ended. And though I lost that game, I didn't lose by much because I had spent all my money on gold when it was very, very cheap. But MIBS doesn't make decisions. It follows a straight and simple flowchart, spending as little as it can and making as much as it can on each of its turns. And if you think about it, that makes the most sense. Plus, you can realistically run as many MIBS opponents as you want, though the rules don't explicitly say so, and you could probably treat this as a 0-player game, just following the same flowchart on each player's turn. And doesn't that sound like a hoot full of fun? Which, in fact, brings me to my tallest hurdle with Black Friday, its complete lack of excitement. There's no story, there's no random adventures. Even Econos, which I reviewed over a year ago on the channel, had an area control element alongside its stock market, which kept things just a little juicy. The only moments of intrigue in Black Friday is when you draw a handful of black shares out of the bag and prepare to tank a bunch of stock values. The game itself can be a little stressful, not as you decide what to buy or what to sell, but in those instances where you have to decide what shares to move in the secondary steps of each action, because it's a little hard to math out what impacts those choices could have on the value of those stocks later on down the line. One other thing I want to gripe about as well real quick is the terrible organization of the rulebook. As an example, I'll turn to page 8 where the price change event is described over the next 2 pages of rules. On page 9 it says to take the black shares you've drawn from the bag, if more than one that is, and place them next to the gold in the bank or supply, adding, quote, "You do not need them for now." When do you need them, you'll wonder, flipping further into the rulebook, except you'll be flipping in the wrong direction, since it's actually on page 7 when it explains refilling the share sale tracks, telling you to place 2 black shares from the bank on the space next to the track. Some simple callouts like see page 7, as well as perhaps a small player aid, at least for MIBS, would have really streamlined this experience a good bit. Now, here's the thing. If you watched any of my Top 100 series, which aired recently here on the channel, you'll know that my favorite theme for games is space and science fiction. What you didn't see in that entire series was a single game about stock markets, with perhaps a small exception with my number 83, Modern Art. I don't do the stock market. I don't mess with investments. Heck, my surroundings in this very room are probably a good indicator that I'm not really good at making sound financial decisions. So for me personally, I'd rate this game somewhere around a 5 because it is super fiddly, and for me personally, it's a fairly lifeless experience. However, in the interest of total fairness, I think it does do a decent job of emulating a stock market with enough randomness and variability just outside of players' control to keep things stressful and chaotic, which is exactly what comes to my mind when I think of the stock market in general. But keep in mind that this simulation happens in physical form here on your table, and that manual management of this game's buttons and levers may drag down the experience for some of you. As of this filming, Black Friday enjoys a 7.4 rating over on BoardGameGeek. And that's probably fair, especially if you're the kind of person who isn't only aware of, but longs to compete in the annual Excel Esports Championship. Personally, it's not really for me, so if you want to buy it, I'd let it go for, say a measly block of gold. Cheers. First, you check the current share sales. Lost track of price changes. First, you check the current shares. She sells seashells by the seashore share sales. That's pretty good. If by this point a number of shales. Oh, crap.